There is no doubt that the Eldrazi Unbound Commander deck is the most popular of the four, both in sales and in value, with pre-sale prices now around $150, despite the other three still being available on Amazon at a relatively reasonable by comparison price, even if they are way too high. With a lot of people going after the Eldrazi deck, I thought it'd be fun to take a look at some potential upgrades for the deck and kind of just go through them together and see what options you might have to buff your colorless strategy up. So let's jump into the video. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the video. If you didn't know, I've launched a channel membership called Loveshack Lounge. For $5 per month, you can join and get immediate access to exclusive badges, emotes, and the ability to vote on topics for future videos, as well as early access to certain videos and exclusive deck profile videos posted monthly, plus monthly product giveaways. And for the month of August, anyone who joins the channel, even if you cancel your membership later, will receive a free Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster pack, all of which will be open live on stream at the end of the month. To join, click the join button that'll appear on mobile or on desktop platforms, and I hope to see you there. Alright, so we'll get these out of the way first, because I have a list of things here that I think are pretty good upgrades to mention, but there's also a couple of, like, exceptionally obvious ones that, like, for budgetary reasons, or perhaps just, like, accessibility reasons, maybe, are not going to be the easiest, thing to accomplish, so I wanted to get those out of the way first. So call them, honorable mentions, or obvious inclusions, if applicable, whatever it may be. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. So if those would be Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger and Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. Both of these are exceptionally good. They are, both Titan versions of Ulamog, and they're both just some of the best Eldrazi cards, period. They combo extremely well with the cards that reduce costs, allowing them to come out a lot cheaper, and they are almost always going to have a devastating impact on the game once they enter play. So if you can get your hands on these, then great. I highly recommend playing both of them in the deck. Ulamog is, the Ceaseless Hunger is reprinted in this set, so there is that. Definitely nice to see a bit more accessibility. The Infinite Gyre was, I believe, reprinted most recently. Was it Double Masters 22? I don't remember. He was reprinted recently. I think it might have been last year's Double Masters, but I could be wrong. I'll have to double check and add a note in the video when the time comes that I do the editing here. But either way, both of these cards are quite good, and both of them are, obvious inclusions if you have access to them. Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger is actually pre-selling around 25 bucks, so it's not too bad. You should be able to get your hands on that one if your budget is, a little bit flexible. But there are a lot of cards in this deck that are upgrades that are pretty freaking expensive, so I just wanted to go ahead and mention these as honorable mentions. Now, we've also got Mana Vault and Mana Crypt, obviously, two of the best mana rocks in general, especially in Commander. If you have these, play them. If you don't have them, certainly they're nice inclusions, though I would argue that as good as Mana Crypt is, for what it costs, you could probably pick up a lot of these other upgrades and make more, more upgrades to the deck than just one specific big card. But obviously, if you have a Mana Crypt, if you have access to a Mana Crypt, play it. It's extremely good. You're playing a deck that's, colorless. This is assuming we're using the face commander here. And if people are interested, I can sort of talk a little bit more about, like, alternate versions of the deck and different commanders you can play, because I think, like, blue-green Eldrazi is a pretty cool combination. And I'm actually working on a red-white Eldrazi deck with Osgear, which is actually going to be the first commander deck profile that we post for the channel in the coming month. So, anyway. These are all pretty much obvious inclusions. I didn't really want to waste anyone's time on them beyond talking about them as something you should play if you have them. So let's take a look at some of the less obvious inclusions that are definitely still good and solid upgrades for the precon. Alright, starting us off, we've got Deceiver of Form. This is 6 and a waste, meaning a colorless mana. And as an Eldrazi creature, it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, reveal the top card of your library. If a creature is revealed this way, you may have creatures you control other than Deceiver of Form become copies of that card until the end of the turn. Then you may put that card on the bottom of the library. So if you have, tokens or things out of that nature, and you can turn one of your other creatures into, Ulamog or Kozilek, or even some of your bigger Eldrazi that, a few we're going to talk about here in a minute. Cards like It That Betrays, just really cool interactions here to be able to make your weaker creatures much more powerful. And obviously Deceiver of Form himself cannot change, but we know that there's still a vast slate of Eldrazi options that you can turn your creatures into. And this is not too expensive at all, so it's a very solid upgrade for the deck. Just a quick note also, in terms of what to cut, I haven't really been able to figure out like the most ideal cuts just yet. I know these are really good upgrades, and there's been a lot of articles out by some well-established, channels and or content creators. I'm actually going to link a couple of them in the description below so you guys can take a look at them and see what's recommended for cuts to sort of help you with your deck building process, because they are definitely going to have a bit more into it than I am at this point with the necessary cuts for the precon, and I feel like I'll feel better about it once I can like sit there and kind of go through it and play test a bit more to see what's there. But a lot of these feel like obvious upgrades. It's just a matter of finding where to fit them. Next up, we've got Conduit of Ruin. This is a 6-drop colorless. When you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card that is colorless with converted mana cost 7 or greater, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top. It also says the first creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. This has really interesting synergy with Deceiver Reform, like we just talked about, because you can actually stack a specific creature on top of the deck and then use Deceiver Reform to, like, turn this into something. Obviously, you'd need a lot of mana to do it, but if you get going and you're able to get to that point, then you're definitely in a good spot. But it's a pretty cool card, and it's not super costly, especially with all your cost reduction stuff. For colorless, you could probably get this out for a very small amount of actual mana investment. Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter is a really powerful card from Brothers War, relatively new. It has flash and flying, but allows you to cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Then whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast it is greater than this card's power, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Certainly a little icing on the cake there, but this card's extremely powerful in conjunction with some of the new cards we talked about, like Darksteel Monolith. Being able to cast your Eldrazi spells with flash for free during either player's turn, even cards like Rise of the Eldrazi. I mean, there's a lot of really cool interactions that you can do with this card, and so having access to it, in addition to the Cicada, which is new in the deck, basically just increases your chances of being able to see one of them and being able to unleash some devastating combos on your opponent's turn, no less. Void Winnower, one of the most unpleasant cards to play against, but still a very powerful inclusion. For 9, it is an Eldrazi 11/9. Your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs. Your opponent can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. There are a lot of cards, obviously, with even converted mana costs, especially some that are very popular that see play, and this card can absolutely wreck a game state. But be aware, it will most likely make you a target if you play it in a pod, because what it ends up doing for a lot of decks is just making it borderline impossible to play some of your more powerful cards. And so this is a very, very strong card that is definitely a worthwhile inclusion. It's just not necessarily going to make you too many friends at the table. Now, Emrakul, the Promised End, arguably the strongest of the Eldrazi, or at least one of them, in terms of card effects, with the exception of course, the banned Emrakul. I was going to put this at the beginning with the obvious inclusions, but I don't know, it seems like one of those things that might actually be a really good option to have, and sort of maybe people aren't aware of it because it's never been reprinted. It's only in Eldritch Moon, and it's actually gone up quite a bit in price with it skipping both the precon and the set somehow. But, costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. When you cast it, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that, that player takes an extra turn, and then it has flying, trample, and protection from instants. This is extremely funny, but also, like, you play this card, and then you just control your opponent's entire next turn. You can waste their cards, you can make them swing into stuff, you can do all kinds of different things. And it can absolutely shift a game state just pretty easily. And though it does cost 13 to play, you have so many ways to reduce the cost of things. Plus, just having, instant sorcery, creature, artifact, whatever in your graveyard is going to make it less. This is an iconic card and definitely a really powerful card that I would recommend including if you can get your hands on it. Hopefully Wizards will give us a reprint of it at some point in the future, because right now, it's still just going up a lot, and I definitely think that's not going to change anytime soon with how good this card really is, and with the new Eldrazi support. Now, Horizon Stone's much cheaper, very good budget option. It is 5, and it says if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. So it's like a crew fix in the sense that it stores your mana, you don't lose it from turn to turn, but we're playing a colorless deck, so it works pretty well in here just to stockpile extra mana, especially if you have it. And if you could get this out pretty early, even, sooner than you usually would with the reduction of, colorless costs and stuff, you can utilize this card to really kind of set yourself up to be able to make big plays with your Titans each turn and utilize some of that unspent mana. It's a pretty good option for this deck. If you're playing a non-colorless version, I think there might be better options. I know Crewfix is a popular commander in general, but it's definitely a card worth mentioning. Now, Ancient Tomb is another one that is an extremely powerful card, and it's just been reprinted in the Lord of the Rings box topper, so it did drop its price down a little bit. It's more affordable than it has been, but it's still pretty pricey at around $45, $50. But it also is just really good. It taps for 2 colorless mana, deals 2 damage to you. How fast this can help you ramp with, like, playing this into a Soul Ring, into an Arcane Signet. I mean, there's so many ways you can ramp very quickly with this deck and be able to just get access to a lot of colorless mana very quickly. And if you can get that advantage and drop a powerful creature like that, you're really going to shift the game state in your favor to a point where an opponent may not be able to come back. So Ancient Tomb is an incredible upgrade if you can afford it, if it's in the budget. If not, there certainly are other land options that are pretty good, but this is definitely the top of the line in terms of, you know, being just one of the best lands in general that you can play in Commander if you have anything that is reliant on colorless. Urza's Saga, you might know this card from other formats and from Commander in general. Just a really, really cool utility enchantment land. It taps for colorless mana, creates artifacts, and then you can search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1 and bring it out. You can bring out things like Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, like we talked about earlier, among other things. It's just a really, really good card, and it's exceptionally useful in a deck that's utilizing colorless and trying to get to your powerful artifacts to supplement your creatures as quickly as possible. It is a little on the higher end of price, around $25-$30, but again, it's a good card and it's a solid upgrade option. Commander's Plate might actually be the best card to upgrade for this deck, and I'm not even sure that it's close, especially if you're playing Zuladak as your commander. It is a 1-drop artifact, says equip creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in its color identity, and it can equip a commander for 3, meaning you can equip it to Zuladak, and because Zuladak is colorless, he gets protection from all colors. It is a really, really strong option to have him out, and keep him safe for a low-risk investment, and I think if you're going to pick up a card, you know, that's a little bit on the higher end price-wise in terms of investments, this is absolutely where I would start to look. I think Commander's Plate is easily just one of the auto-include cards if you can get access to it. It is about $25 right now. It's kind of unfortunate they didn't reprint it because it's just creeped up in price over time, but its synergy with Zuladak specifically is just not something to be understated. Eye of Ugin, another very, very good card that says colorless Eldrazi spells you cast cost 2 less. Pay 7, search your library for a colorless creature, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle. This card, again, very powerful. It has gone up in price a bit, though, which I think is obviously directly tied into the Eldrazi stuff, because this card was like $10 back in not even 3 months ago. And now it's around 38 to 40, so it didn't get the reprint. It's really, really one of those cards that, like, a lot of people might have had early, and if you did, you're probably in a good spot because you don't have to worry about shelling much out for it. The cheapest version is the Worldwake version. I think that's available around like 30. But hopefully you got a chance to get this sooner if you were interested in the deck. It's just, you can read it and understand why it's so good. Being a land that reduces the cost, and so many of our big, powerful creatures can now come out easier. So I highly recommend this one too. It's right up there with Ancient Tomb in terms of its, you know, utility, and honestly might even be better than Ancient Tomb in this deck specifically. Sanctum of Ugin, tap to add 1 to your mana pool. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you can sacrifice this card. If you do, search your library for a colorless creature, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Another really good option to get access to some of your bigger Eldrazi, and it's not very hard to utilize. Plus tapping for colorless mana, just a good inclusion, a good upgrade, probably over some of the wastes that are in the deck. Being able to have, you know, more flexibility with your lands is always a good thing. And finally, Urza's Incubator. This is a 3-drop artifact. As it ETBs, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. So obviously, you declare Eldrazi. You can bring out, you know, cards like the Cicada for like 1 mana, assuming you don't have anything else. But, you know, if you declare Eldrazi and then you have this, and then you have Eye of Ugin, among other things, I mean, this is just a really, really powerful card for a typal deck that just allows you to continue to reduce costs. And so by turn 3 or 4, in some cases, you might be able to put an Eldrazi out if you open the right combination of cards, you know, Mana Crypt and this and Soul Ring. I mean, you're playing a deck that's based on utility artifacts and big creatures, and this, you know, card is just one of the best options to synergize with all of that. So yeah, these are just some of the upgrades. I definitely think all of them are really good to look at and include. Like I said, I'll post a couple reference links below if you guys want to look at stuff that, like, people are recommending to cut. Obviously, this is not all encompassing. There are plenty other upgrades that can be made and should be made, perhaps. But these are just some to get you started, and some of the more, you know, impactful changes you can make to the deck to really make it really powerful out of the box beyond what it already is. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. If you're playing the deck, do you agree with or disagree with some of these upgrades? What you might recommend cutting just to help other people with that, those suggestions. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join the channel membership, you can go ahead and do that by clicking the button below. For the month of August, all members do get a free booster pack. So plus, other perks and stuff. So check it out if you're interested. It's only $5 and the support is really, really appreciated. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.